Hello there. My name is Jason Perry, and I first want to welcome all friends of local government, proponents of building better communities, locally elected officials, local government professional staff, city managers, and local government finance leaders. If you are here to learn how to apply beard oil properly, you're at the wrong place. But if you're here to learn how to use these gray hairs to maximize revenues and achieve automated compliance without impacting your budget, you've come to the right place. So thanks for joining me. First, I'd like to share with you our track record. Here at Azavar, we've worked with over 400 local governments across the country and over 24 states and 2 U.S. Commonwealths. As you can see here, there's millions of dollars listed, wonderful records. This experience and these results are not specific only to just these communities. Azavar's commitment to its customers, you, municipalities, counties, local governments, is to ensure that you're getting every penny you're due. And we use technology to do that. And so let me share a few examples of that. Some of you may know where Far Texas is. Let me tell you, it is far away down in southern Texas. But Far Texas was able, through the Azavar and local gov platform, to recover $11,000 annually in lost sales tax revenue. Cesar, Illinois, a very small town in central Illinois, central southern Illinois, was able to transform their ability using Azavar's local gov platform to track tax receipts and trends so that they could see how they were best serving their community, their businesses, and how they could better serve their community. Rock Island, Illinois, Springfield, Illinois, Rockford, Illinois, are all examples of cities in the Rust Belt, cities that have been working for decades to transform themselves into service economies, that have been working to build development and build community and enrich the economic development opportunities within their communities and enrich the lives of the people that live in those communities and the businesses that do business. All three of those communities, Rock Island, Springfield, and Rockford, were all beneficiaries of asking the question, am I getting every penny of self-reported revenue from my cable providers? Lo and behold, Rockford recovered a significant amount of money from their cable provider. In addition, while looking at that cable provider, we were able to also identify $115,000 in annual overpayments by the city to the utility provider for utility services that should not have been paid for in the first place because they weren't being used. Not all of them were being delivered. Let me talk about Springfield and Rock Island first. Rock Island, from another different cable provider, recovered $133,000 going back and subsequent revenues inuring to their benefit every year since then, going forward in cable fees and taxes. And very important in Rockford, in Rock Island, was their PEG dollars, programming for public, educational, and governmental television. PEG is what it's called. Some of you may be familiar with it, but PEG dollars is a very small amount of dollars collected on the cable bill, but it comes back to your city so that you can show town meetings or city council meetings via the internet, so that you can put on community programming on television or other internet or other informational media platforms. And this was very important to Rock Island. And a big chunk of that $133,000 was money that went back into their pockets so that they could enrich and enhance their public educational and governmental programming. Springfield, Illinois. Not often do I get to tell the story of a provider, and here we've listed Comcast, because of the tenacity of the mayor, Mayor James Langfelder, a wonderful mayor in Springfield, Illinois, and his tenacity to get every penny back to his community, first as treasurer and then as mayor. And in doing that, the local press happened to catch on when they discussed it at a council meeting that they couldn't believe that they had received almost $1 million going back, and then subsequently equal or smaller but equal amounts going forward every quarter. for perpetuity, so long as they had their cable franchise in place. And this was actually reported by the very astute Springfield Journal Register. You're always welcome to look it up online, just Google it. That's why I can share with you who the provider was here, Comcast. But taxpayers are taxpayers, and most taxpayers are not looking to cheat government. They make mistakes. But unless you look, you'll never find out. And unless you help them be better compliant or more compliant, you educate them, you train them on changes in your ordinances, they update their gross revenue computations or their address list, their GIS lists for your community in order to make sure that you're getting every penny that you're due, well, then you're not going to probably see every penny you're due. And I've talked to many local government officials, managers, finance directors, treasurers, clerks, mayors, council members, trustees, aldermen. And when I ask the question, how do you know that you're getting every penny you're due? Because most local government revenues are fully self-reported and rarely ever checked in most cities or counties nationwide. And usually they end up scratching their head, I don't know, but let's find out. But I want to go back to the story about Rockford, Illinois. Rockford, while we were working on implementing, using our local gov proprietary technology for identifying errors in underpayments of franchise fees by their cable provider, we looked at also the taxes that provider should have been paying, and we looked at the customer relationship between that municipality and that provider. And so here's a very important point, and it's very specific to utility taxes or utilities and the relationship between utilities and municipalities. They've, for 200 years plus, and well before the invention of or discovery of electricity, have municipalities and utilities been intertwined in their relationships and their success. And so in Rockford, in every audit of utilities, we look at three things. I call it the three-legged stool. And if any one leg of that stool is not reviewed or analyzed, there is potential for loss, and that stool is just going to fall over. And so every municipality or county has a constitutional authority to manage the police powers through their state constitution of their rights of way. And this is where the right to receive franchise fees comes from. Every municipality in many states have the ability to levy taxes, and many do levy taxes on utilities, either on the utility service, on gross receipts, or on the utility as just another business that operates within their community. And that's usually a statutory issue. But most communities don't always look at that customer relationship that they have with utilities. And in a few states in the union, utilities give away free service, or at least account for free service, which they're providing municipality in exchange for additional use of rights of way, or in exchange for abatement of permit fees, etc. And this was such an issue here in Rockford, Illinois. Every state in the union I go to says, show me the money, Jason, show me the money, except Missouri, which is the show me state. And the lesson there is, Missouri just expects you to show them without them having to ask. And in Maryland Heights, as of our returned over $80,000 per annum. Maryland Heights is a community about 32,000 in population and growing. It's a suburb of St. Louis, along with its neighbors, Crestwood, Ferguson. Many of you have heard of Ferguson. They were seriously in need of money and identifying new revenues. East Prairie, Wood Heights, Bertrand, Valley Park, Aliceville, and I can go on and name 40 additional communities we work with in Missouri. But the Maryland Heights case here is very special because the community had continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. And so they annexed new land. And this was, mind you, this was over a 40-year period. They annexed new land. They worked with developers to build residential, retail, small commercial, light industrial developments and managing all their planning and zoning. And all this was developed. And the utility taxpayer didn't have their eye on the ball. And they didn't have their eye on the ball on either side of the equation. Every tax fee or impact fee, et cetera, has two things really to look at. It's pretty simple. You look at how it's calculated or being calculated by the fee or taxpayer. And you make sure that they're assessing that for every serviceable location or use or purpose within your corporate boundaries of your municipality, your county, your parish. This didn't happen in Maryland Heights, Missouri. And so a few $100s a year or $1,000 a year, this accumulated over 40 years. And by the time it accumulated and an audit was done, and we put Maryland Heights in a local gov platform and did all this analysis here at ASAVAR, Maryland Heights had accrued losses of $80,000 a year. Now that they're getting in perpetuity going forward, and that is a big deal for Maryland Heights in any community. That's a police officer and their pension costs right there. But let's talk more in depth about a few of these communities. And there's small communities here, large communities, old communities, new communities. Hudson, New York, is a great example that was looking at one of the oldest towns in the United States in the Hudson River Valley, where a lot of the urban dwellers go around the New York metropolitan area to see the wonderful fall leaves, to spend time during the summer. And there's many towns that we work with in the Hudson River Valley, like Hudson, that digitized their lodging tax. And lodging tax is very complex, especially when you have to license it, and it's licensed by property owner. And when you start adding in the numbers related to short-term rentals and online travel companies, I bet many of you didn't know that you should be receiving, if you have a hotel tax or lodging tax, revenues from orbits. Of course, through short-term rentals, Hudson now is receiving the revenues it should be, and all those taxpayers are compliant through whether they're using a short-term, they're presenting or posting a short-term rental that's being rented out on Airbnb or Flipkey or one of the Expedia networks like HomeAway or VRBO. There's numerous, and they continue to grow, short-term rental platforms out there that must be monitored. And any community, big or small, it doesn't have the resources to monitor those. And these are all self-reported taxes. So there's a lot of work that goes into ensuring that a community that's levying a tax is getting every penny of that tax. And all new taxpayers that come around are educated and knowledgeable on the tax. They're well served, like they're your own neighbor. And that is the service level we provide at ASAVAR and local gov through our concierge customer service. So let me get into a little more detail, if you don't mind. I want to talk about Quincy, Illinois. We're talking about short-term rentals. We're talking about hotel taxes. Quincy, Illinois recovered $90,000, and we haven't even gotten to the hotel, $90,000 in cable franchise fee annually, as well as new lodging tax revenues by transitioning their lodging tax to the nationwide local gov network of taxpayers, and fully automated its short-term rental and its food and beverage compliance by digitizing with local gov. And there's one item I want to mention here. Local gov ASAVAR is the leader in the United States regarding local government collections and local gov, the total comprehensive package of local government revenue collections, compliance, enforcement, filings, taxpayer education, and customer service. When we get into the nitty-gritty of what's one thing that makes local gov special? Well, every business like Airbnb has to file taxes locally. Airbnb, on behalf of many of its short-term rental subscribers or users on their site, submits or sends out about 60,000 tax filings, local government tax filings and payments and tax remittances per month. So they have a lot to keep up with. So little old Quincy, Illinois, if there's some hosts there that aren't properly coded, if there are, if Airbnb doesn't have all its data complete and properly calibrated to indicate it's Quincy property, if all the gross receipts aren't properly computed, because as we know, if any of you have stayed in a short-term rental, there's cleaning fees, security fees. These are all part of gross receipts. And local leaders in Quincy didn't have the time. They didn't have the staff. They didn't have the expertise. They didn't know all this. So what makes local gov special is that rather than to become digital and to streamline compliance and using modern technology to do that, Quincy could have put up a PDF on their website. But now that means your customer, your taxpayer, those businesses or residents, which all of these 400 plus communities nationwide look to Azavar to serve and support with concierge customer service, they have to go to Airbnb in this example, has to go to 60,000 different websites, get 60,000 different PDFs, or let's say your local government is upgrading your GL technology to be similar, like maybe your water billing is. If you have a water billing utility in your municipality that you run, and you have water billing online, your residents or businesses go and pay their water bill online, update their information, see their bill, etc. Local gov allows for them, all those taxpayers to come to one central repository for all that information, for the ability to file and pay those taxes in one location rather than, in this example, downloading 60,000 different tax forms and tax filings to be able and making sure that you're up to date with those every month, and then getting those forms and the checks out to the municipality. Local gov solves that problem by being a nationwide network for your taxpayers. So whether you have a PDF online or you've opened up a GL form, well, there's still a lot of local governments across the United States to which property owners, to which businesses, to which residents, and with the short-term rental market, many of those short-term rentals are owned by individual property owners. In this the Hudson River Valley example I shared with you a moment ago, there are many property owners that own properties in multiple communities along the Hudson River. And now they're able to pay and file and pay their taxes for all those properties in one spot, one form, one filing. And local gov, of course, is ensuring that those filings are compliant. So our technology is reviewing that, flagging errors, etc. But back to Quincy. So as I was sharing with you, and this is how we got it in the short-term rental side of the equation, Quincy still had the issue, though, of brick and mortar hotels. And believe it or not, in a community with about 12 to 16 brick and mortar hotels, many of them, we know their location. They're right in the community, so we don't necessarily need to know, we don't necessarily need to worry about them having a problem with reporting where they're providing service, because they're in the corporate boundaries of the community. But the definition of gross receipts is so broad in most communities, most municipal and county ordinances across the United States, that it gets interpreted differently by the thousands, hundreds of thousands of business and local business tax preparers or accountants or hotel chains or hotel locations or hotel franchisees, that indeed Quincy benefited from, as of our working with each of those hoteliers, onboarding them to local gov so that we could see all their tax filings coming through, request some additional information from them electronically through local gov, and then review that information and provide issues that we identified that they may not have been computing gross receipts on. And as you see here with what our friend Treasurer Moore, Linda Moore, in the city of Quincy, Illinois, and feel free to give her a call, please. And when you do, tell her Jason Perry says hello. But as you see, she says very clearly, combining both the tax collection process and the tax audit process at the same time, and doing them concurrently on the back end with one company really made for a simple, easy package deal that made sense for Quincy economically and logistically. And I actually have a few other words from Linda that she shared with me that I'd like to share with you. Through the audit process, according to Treasurer Moore, Azavar helped to educate my staff and me, but also to educate our hotel staff. I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from the process and the program. There were a lot of ambiguities in our old ordinances that had been on the books for 30, 40 years, and we updated and clarified our ordinances with Azavar. We updated and educated the staff at all of our tax-paying hotels and tax-paying short-term rental platforms, tax-paying online travel company platforms, of course. We updated and educated the staff as to the interpretation of that ordinance, and we really brought everyone up to speed and onto the same page so that moving forward, everyone knew exactly what our ordinance meant. Then, through the relationships that Azavar had through the national online travel companies and short-term rental companies, we were able to put those service providers on the same level playing field as our local hotels and motels. And that is very critical, especially as we move into a more digital era, gig economy, a sharing economy, an e-commerce economy. There's a lot more to South Dakota v. Wayfair than just sales tax. It's about remote sellers. It's about affiliate sellers, folks selling businesses and folks selling online or transacting online. But yet it has an impact locally in your community. So they're globally doing something on the internet, on the web, or via phone. It used to be via catalog. Some of you may remember the old Quill case that stood for many years, which operated via catalog until the South Dakota v. Wayfair case overturned that. And now many of your communities are benefiting from the sales taxes being received from those remote sellers and affiliates. But let me share another item is we didn't just, we undertook an entire 360-degree revenue program for Quincy. And when we talk about when ASAVAR is talking about a 360-degree revenue program, that revenue program is we become your third-party administrator, so that you only have to worry that your money is in the bank and it is properly being spent in accordance with your budget, and it's going into the proper funds. You hand off to ASAVAR the concern of, well, are all my taxpayers compliant? How can I reduce the cost and maximize revenue through digital tax filing and tax payment? How can I monitor those tax filings and tax payments for changes over time, or for changes in technology, or for changes in industry definitions, changes in statutory definitions, changes in legal definitions, and so forth? How do I ensure that all my taxpayers are paying every penny that they're due, and they're reporting on time, and when they're not, and we do have interest, our community does have interest and or penalty components to our ordinances. Those are being properly assessed and collected fairly and equitably, I might add. And then how do we deal with compliance for new taxpayers that come on the rolls? Well, we make sure that when they go through local gov, they get that clarity, that definition of what, as Linda so eloquently spoke, Treasurer Moore said in her statement, ensuring that those taxpayers are knowledgeable and educated right up front. So they come into local gov and they're not just filling out a form. They're learning, they're filling out a form that is specific to the definition of gross revenue in Quincy, which may be different than a definition of gross revenue in another community in another state, but most likely not. But they are getting educated via video, via chat, via customer service, and they're getting updated ordinances when there are ordinance changes through the ASAVAR 360-degree revenue cloud. As your third-party administrator, we're also enforcing those ordinances, and we're also collecting when there are delinquencies, and we're, of course, providing top-shelf concierge-level customer service. And we use this word concierge because in many communities, we work with many local businesses, and in all my years of growing gray hairs and working with local governments, I know local governments and local businesses like to do business locally. So they like to know what's going on and how we're going to help them. And we do that in person, over the phone, via chat, via webinar, via web meeting, through our concierge customer service. And that's exactly why we use the concierge term. And that is what our customers, taxpayers, or like, as we like to say, our customers have come to appreciate and value. I want to share with you, though, one other element that Treasurer Moore shared with me, and I'm going to read this verbatim for you, because this relates to another tax. So local gov can handle all taxes, and ASAVAR looks at all forms of revenue within your community, and then manages them, maintains them, sustains them, and ensures they're being enhanced. According to Treasurer Moore, I think local gov was probably the most cost-effective way for us to onboard the volume of bars and restaurants that we have. As I said, we have some 380 bars and restaurants, and to collect or even just register and ensure they're in compliance every year and every month with their filings, or educate them on our own would have cost us more than what we are paying to use local gov. So it is just a very cost-effective program for us, this us being Quincy. And Treasurer Moore goes on to say, but also, I think for our owners, our business owners, it's just so convenient. One thing I'm hearing from our owners at hotels and motels and restaurants is that it's just so easy. Have you ever thought you would hear taxpayers say that it's so easy, it's so pleasant? to pay my taxes? Well, as part of the as of our 360-degree revenue cloud, backed up by the technology of local gov, that is what you're going to be able to come to expect. Now, I'd like to go into more detail about O'Fallon, Illinois. And O'Fallon is a very interesting case study. I shared with you, and I see a zero missing on my slide, but nonetheless, it is $250,000 or $250,000 annually coming back to O'Fallon from just the audit and onboarding and maintenance on a local gov and monitoring and management of that one revenue source from one utility provider in this case. And while we're looking at dozens of revenue sources, depending upon the community, all the way up, from sales tax, property tax, utility taxes, down to dog walking licenses and dog beach licenses, whatever the revenue source might be, and managing and monitoring the costs related to it and lowering those costs is part of the entire as of our 360-degree revenue cloud using local gov. But in O'Fallon, we boosted revenues by $250,000 annually. And the O'Fallon story is almost incomprehensible. O'Fallon, Illinois is a burgeoning community. And I remember talking with the original long-standing finance director, Dean Rich, and his assistant, Sandy Evans, now the finance director in O'Fallon, as Mr. Rich retired. And their city manager, Walter Denton, and their mayor at the time, Gary Graham, their current mayor, with which we work, is Herb Roach. And local government officials there, Dean Rich and Sandy Evans, they suspected there was a shortfall in utility revenues due to addresses in recently annexed areas missing from taxpayer records. But they couldn't get access to these taxpayer records. No matter how many times they called the utility company, no matter how hard they worked with their local government affairs representative, they were never given the data or the cooperation that was necessary to first identify the monies, collect the monies, and then make sure that those losses never occur again through digital compliance, enforcement, and collections. O'Fallon staff didn't possess the experience or technical expertise to complete an exhaustive investigation of the issue. And as I'll share with you, we did conduct an exhaustive down to every penny. When I say are getting every penny you're due, some of our customers, in some of their revenue sources, we only find a few cents. I'll share more about that with you in a little bit. But also in regards to O'Fallon, there was some recent state legislation that had been introduced that allowed the city only a short window of opportunity to file claims for any missing tax revenues. And in this case, it was a statute of limitations. And statutes of limitations vary by tax type, fee type, state, jurisdiction, your ordinances. Your ordinances might provide for a shorter statute of limitations than what the state statute provides, or what is customary under contract law in your state, if it's a fee or a tax that is supposed to be remitted as a result of some sort of contract. But after working with Azavar, and let me tell you what the work was. We had to bring the utility provider in to a local hearing that was conducted by Azavar. So first and foremost, I learned when we began working with our first community that it's not just about the money, it's about the time. And the communities, municipalities, have less staff with less time and less resources, counties. Whether your economic base is decreasing or increasing, you're always strained because you're always trying to manage those decreases and find new growth, or you're looking to manage that growth and ensure it's sustainable and it can continue moving forward. So Azavar looked through millions and millions of records at a local hearing for which we provided all the legal staff, all the attorneys, and the effective rate of an attorney looking through data and millions of rows of data and ordinances really slows them down. So a typical municipal attorney that has a rate of anywhere from $150 to $300 an hour, double or triple that, because when they're looking through all that granular data and needing to understand the issues of noncompliance in a local hearing, that's what our attorneys bring to the table. Our counsel our legal relationships in order to ensure. But this was from a scene right out of a John Grisham movie in a courtroom, or a scene right out of A Few Good Men. Utility employees not wanting to admit the errors that the data showed, that as of our staff spent months putting through the local gov platform, reviewing, narrowing down to which errors occurred in which months during the statute of limitations period, or the audit period. And all of that narrowed down to 2,600 instances where addresses had been incorrectly coded and were therefore not being taxed, or taxes weren't being remitted by the utility provider for their gross receipts. And in this case, 2,600 instances at this time represented about 1/6 of the households or serviceable locations within O'Fallon, but it represented 25% of the actual revenue. So O'Fallon received a 33% revenue boost going from, for this particular revenue source, going from $750,000 a year to $1 million a year, based on errors relating to almost 1/6 of all the serviceable locations or residences, businesses, et cetera, within their corporate boundaries. And lo and behold, this utility provider was also improperly computing based on a half-century old erroneous understanding of the definition of gross receipts in the statute, that not only did O'Fallon benefit, but all communities that were within this serviceable territory of this utility benefited by this error being corrected through the due diligence of the ASVAR process and local gov through the ASVAR 360-degree revenue cloud. But to make sure that, it's when you see errors like that, and I shared errors like that in Maryland Heights, Missouri, just a little bit ago. We see errors that size. That's why maintenance, maintaining a relationship, a data sharing relationship with your taxpayers, and that data being able to be automatically read and issues being able to be flagged. LocalGov, our proprietary technology platform that provides for filing, collection, remittance, collections, delinquencies, enforcement, code violations, et cetera, ensuring that indeed every penny is getting back to the community was what was most important, and staying that way, because no one wanted to see errors like this occur again. Because that courtroom scene, which was not in a courtroom, it was in a city council chamber at 8 in the morning when no one else was typically around, with just representatives from the utility and representatives from ASVAR on behalf of O'Fallon, working to go through each and every one of these issues to ensure that all the dollars were computed right for any past monies due, and that they were corrected properly going forward. And they continue to this day to stay compliant going forward. And when a new residence or business or building, a new development comes on the rolls, tax rolls, or someone leaves a property and a new customer moves into that property, there are no issues or no errors because of the system set up by ASVAR using our local gov platform to monitor and manage all of those errors that had been occurring and ensure they wouldn't occur again in the future. And as you can see, Mayor Graham at that time has laudatory comments about the results that ASVAR produced. Who couldn't use $250,000 for their annual budget? And now I'd like to share another example with you. Erie County, Ohio. And Erie County, Ohio has Cedar Point, wonderful vacation spot if you live in the upper Midwest, or if you live anywhere in the United States. Cedar Point is a destination location. Erie County is a destination location. Kelly's Island is a destination location for those that like to vacation in the U.S. And certainly Sandusky, Ohio. But Erie County needed to identify all of their hoteliers, including short-term rentals, as they had just recently implemented a short-term rental modification to their ordinances, because they wanted to ensure that their brick and mortar hotels that had made investments in their communities were getting a fair shake with relative to the competition of short-term rentals and online travel companies. And so the county didn't know how to identify or collect taxes from short-term rentals pursuant to that new legislation that they had passed. And it didn't even have a way for hosts to register rentals or pay taxes. And they needed to have it happen very quickly, within 60 days. The As of Our team implemented local gov short-term rental administration solution and identified 100% of short-term rental hosts in the jurisdiction. We added online tax payment capabilities so hosts can manage their accounts online. They can remit steady payments. They can report on those payments to the county and stay compliant. And then the county who's collecting the tax, local gov now distributes that to the appropriate jurisdictions, because under that new ordinance, a portion of that lodging tax was to go to each of the local townships or municipalities within that jurisdiction, within Erie County, where that lodging had taken place. And so they were sharing in those taxes. And so Erie County had a lot of work, and their Chamber of Commerce, their local Convention Visitors Bureau, had done a lot of work, but they had identified only about 75% of short-term rentals, and short-term rentals keep changing. And I don't know why, but short-term rental hosts don't make it, or platforms don't make it easy to know the address, probably because they don't want folks coming and knocking on your door one day just for the heck of it. But short-term rental platforms don't publish addresses. So you have to go through lists and lists and lists. So local gov processes all these listings from over 30 different listing or storm short-term rental operating management platforms, storm. But really 80% of most revenues flow through Airbnb and Expedia's properties, VRBO and HomeAway. But as you can see from CFO Hurst, Ms. Brenda Hurst, and Rick, the county auditor, our taxpayers are very happy to use local gov. Again, here's another instance. When are you going to hear taxpayers and businesses are happy to pay their taxes? When you make it easy for them, when you make it simple, fast, as least costly as possible. Many computations or many numbers that typically float out around there for a typical hotel tax filing form for a local government costs anywhere from $12 to $100 to process, depending upon who's processing it, how much computation needs to go into gross receipts, if it needs to be accountant reviewed for multi-property businesses that are doing business in multiple jurisdictions across the country. There is a lot of work involved. And so, as Ms. Hurst says, our taxpayers are very happy to use local gov. It is user-friendly, and they enjoy doing their payments online. They enjoy paying their taxes. The phone calls have decreased over time because the system, and as of our concierge customer service, the system automatically calculates the tax, but as of our concierge customer service takes the calls from the taxpayers. And in this case, Erie County wanted to ensure that their local taxpayers dealt with them more frequently than they dealt with local as of our and local gov customer service representatives, because they wanted to maintain that local feel and that local connection with their newly taxed short-term rental properties. So those stories, and I've got more to share, and there's a story behind every one. But first, what I'm talking about, what you're listening to, and if you don't have time after we go through a little bit more, and you need to come back to this, please feel free, or please feel free to click and schedule a call, and I'm looking forward and would be glad to talk with you about your circumstances and how the As of Our 360-degree revenue cloud using local gov can help you maximize revenues, reduce costs, and strengthen relationships with your taxpayers and your constituents and your residents, your businesses. But who's this for? If you're experiencing volatility in sales taxes, decreases in property values, long-term decline in property tax, threats from state aid, that are well outside of your control, much less your state's control, then stick around. If you're looking for ways to increase revenue without raising taxes, or you want your revenue structure to respond to external economic, technological, demographic, legal changes, then stick around. If you find it difficult to educate your staff, new staff, and with staff turnover, and taxpayer turnover, new businesses being bought and sold, or new businesses are hopefully coming into your community and setting up shop and paying their taxes. But if you find it difficult to consistently and continuously educate your staff and taxpayers about tax compliance, enforcement, collections, and you want to increase transparency for your citizens, both residents and businesses, they are getting the most out of their tax dollars, and they feel it and they know it, then stick around. And managing your revenues more assertively and with a closer eye and through a third-party administrator, and the number one third-party administrator in the United States, ASAVAR and its local gov platform. You don't have to be a community whose revenues are on the decline. Some communities have revenues on the decline, and before they raise taxes, they want to make sure that they're getting every dollar, every penny they're due. Other communities, revenues are on the incline, and they want to ensure that nothing's falling through the cracks, everyone's compliant, so that they can continue going on with new development, enhancing their community experience, building a community where the residents want to stay and businesses want to come. Either end of the spectrum. For whatever reason, if you just want to know that you're getting every penny you're due, because most local government revenues are self-reported and are self-reported based upon a lot of data behind the scenes that go in about 5 or 10 lines or fields on a page, then stick around. If you want to earn your city better credit ratings, or know how you can improve your credit ratings for your bonds that may be supported by these revenue sources, with Fitch, with Standard & Poor, with Moody's, and you want to meet or exceed your revenue goals, then stick around. But really, who's this for? Here's the truth. Your local government can maximize revenues and achieve full compliance while decreasing costs using the right resources and the right technology. However, with high turnover, depleting resources, fewer and fewer staff, more positions that end up being left vacant because budget dollars aren't there, or there's not an ability to levy additional taxes or raise taxes, and the loss of institutional knowledge. Many of the communities I've worked with, I shared with you O'Fallon. Dean Rich had been there in O'Fallon when O'Fallon was a community of only just a couple thousand. And he had worked at Sky Air Force Base and had been part of the community for a long time. And the mayor he was a very financially astute fellow. The mayor asked him to be the finance director at the time, his right hand, to help him in building the community. But that institutional knowledge left. Thank goodness in O'Fallon, Sandy Evans worked closely and side by side with her predecessor, Dean Rich. Sandy Evans, the current finance director, carried forward that institutional knowledge. But in many, many communities, that institutional knowledge doesn't get carried forward, and things begin to fall through the cracks. And when you don't look at things, when you don't look at the money you're receiving over a 10, 20, 30-year period, and you don't make sure that it's not just coming in the door every month or every quarter or every year, but that you know that every penny is well accounted for, and you can trust that tax filing, and you can trust the compliance, and you can trust that if your taxpayers require a payment plan because of some economic circumstances, that they're going to be compliant under that enforcement mechanism and that collection mechanism. But with the loss of institutional knowledge, the high cost and demand of compliance management quickly becomes unmanageable for the staff that is left in your town, your city, your parish, your county, your village, your commonwealth, or your state. And I say state because ASAVAR and ASAVAR's local gov technology is utilized by 24 states in the union through the Streamlined Sales Tax Program and the Streamlined Sales Tax Registration System to ensure that all sellers, especially remote sellers and affiliate sellers, are registered in those 24 states. And I'll give them to you real quick because I know them off the top of my head. Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, Nevada, New Jersey, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Utah, Vermont, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Tennessee is a part member and uses some of the services that are provided through the local gov streamlined sales tax registration system. But in use within 24 states, trusted by 24 state Department of Revenues to ensure that the taxpayers are properly being registered within their system, their Department of Revenue system, and that those taxpayers are compliant going forward. And note, in that list of 24 plus Tennessee, there's only 3 states here in the Union that have only 4 letters in them, and they begin with a vowel. See if you can remember which states I mentioned, and all 3 of them are in that list. See if you can remember and think of which states those are. But back to the truth. So in terms of talking about the high cost and demand of compliance management quickly becoming burdensome for decreasing staff numbers and staff hours, my team, as of our LocalGov, the technology platform we have developed for local governments nationwide to handle compliance, audits, filings, payments, collections, enforcement, delinquencies, reporting at a business analytics level of a Fortune 500 company. We are the best people dedicated to solving this problem for local governments. And it's not a problem until you make sure that you know the answer. Am I really getting every penny I'm due? And so, as I shared with you, we're trusted by 24 states plus Tennessee in the streamlined sales tax registration system through LocalGov. These are just a few of the communities, old Hudson to new, Chino Hills, California, to large Cook County, Illinois, to small Sasser, Illinois. We work with communities of all shapes, types, sizes, amount of revenue, low, high, numbers of sources of revenue, many, few. We are here to help you have a better experience. You can focus on ensuring that you're building the best community you can and supporting that within your community, and that your customers, your taxpayers, are feeling that as well. They're getting that benefit by being happy and living within your community and thriving. Of course, working with over 400 plus local governments and 24 plus states, and remember, 2 commonwealths in the United States. As it participates where our customers are. And we participate because we contribute back to the communities that they are part of, their professional associations, their state municipal leagues, their local or regional councils of governments or COGs or regional groups, their Government Finance Officers Association, the International City County Managers Association, all the way to smaller groups like TIPS. TIPS is a small program that was developed in Texas that's now nationwide for procurement and a well-defined procurement process on which all local governments can leverage that through their purchasing associations. But ASAVAR doesn't only give back to the communities where our customers and decision makers and the folks that we work with in those communities are municipal leagues, professional associations, councils of governments. We also get back to our customers, our communities, and think of LocalGov as a community of communities by giving back our citizen service hours or volunteer hours within each of our communities across the country. Now, as I shared with you, if you forgot, my name is Jason Perry. I'm not going to read this in the third person. Jason identified a market challenge, as though I'm a little out there. I'm just going to tell you very simply my story, and it's like any other story. Back in 1996, I founded ASAVAR. Why? Because like all entrepreneurs, I saw a market opportunity or a market problem, and I came up with and believed that we had a solution to alleviate that problem for local governments, for businesses that work with local governments that are filing and paying taxes. And at heart, I am a techie, a tech guy, and a technologist by training. I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana or Urbana-Champaign, depending upon which side of the street you live on, but the acronym is UIUC, so it's usually University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And after school, I worked for another software provider prior to Azavar, and that software provider was Wolfram Research, which built a product called Mathematica. It's a very analytical tool used by mathematicians, engineers, statisticians in many different ways. It also is its own programming language. But in being a technology, a techie, I don't know if I look like a nerd. I'll leave that up to you. But I was also born and bred in fourth generation local government, meaning I'm working with local governments, and my software company, my service company, Azavar and Local Gov, work with over 400 plus local governments. But my dad was a city manager, and that's where I developed my sense of civic duty and civic pride. And sometimes I learned from my father that one can better identify problems looking, if they are on the outside looking in than on the inside looking out. Or one can come up with creative solutions to tough challenges, like not being able to raise tax levies, but yet in dire need of new revenues during periods like the Great Recession. And so, and my father's, my great uncle was a public works and parks director in Wisconsin, and I recently learned that just before him, one of my family members was a garbage collector in a city in Wisconsin. But I would listen to my father growing up. He took me back in those days. There wasn't much money for local government officials, and they didn't make very much, so they couldn't afford babysitters. So I went to a lot of board meetings and hung around at the reception desk outside the council chambers. But I listened to my father wax on about the challenges of providing excellent constituent customer service while managing a growing community of increasing complexity. And he has since turned that into a book called Blueprint for Building Community. As suburban and ex-urban communities boomed around this time, legacy government systems that our customers worked with, and legacy systems, I mean legacy technology. Technology gets updated every few years. Municipalities, counties usually go through a 10-year or so life cycle with a piece of technology before they reevaluate another piece of technology or some major overhaul or significant upgrades. Those legacy government systems couldn't keep up though with the web. When I got out of school at U of I, where the web was born, the World Wide Web, meaning with a user interface, a friendly user interface that was the web browser, which at that time was called the NCSA Mosaic project, turned into Netscape, and history goes from there. But those legacy government systems couldn't keep up with the digital needs and the changing needs of the community, and municipal coffers lost out on critical revenues at a time when service needs were expanding dramatically. I saw a fantastic potential that modern technology might offer municipalities. And unlike other startups at the time, Azavar brought more than just a flashy.com approach. I have my pocket square here in my coat pocket, a flashy.com approach to its customers' needs. And governments need and deserve understanding, accountability, and innovative solutions, not just large companies, and they need to be affordable for local government. So as the needs of municipalities have changed, Azavar's evolved our business to tackle those requirements, such as adding a full revenue analysis arm. So people that actually are experts, MPAs, prior finance directors, et cetera, that are experts in analyzing the balance of different revenue sources, in analyzing revenues and what new revenues or changes in the revenue structure in the community how that might impact the growth or change the economic base of that local government, that town, that village, that city or county. About 2006 is when we did that, and it was in 2016 that we started developing this streamlined sales tax system for handling registrations for 24 plus states. And so that's when we expanded and built a full streamlined revenue management, tax remittance and filing and compliance platform, all in one nice package. the knowledge, the people, the process, and the technology. It's not just about the technology. From someone who's worked in software business for almost 25 years. And for more than 25 years, Azavar has proved just that, that governments need and deserve understanding, accountability, and innovative solutions affordably. Local governments need a common sense sensibility combined with the limitless creativity that the private sector may offer. The Council of Experts in partnership, and by council, I do mean council, large national law firms to specialists that know the ins and outs of a specific taxpayers' systems, global taxpayers' tax systems, or technology, or the computation of different definitions of gross receipts for cable franchise fees, or for PEG fees, and what the difference is between operating costs and capital costs. But that is the Council of Experts in partnership with bespoke development, software engineering, caring consultation plus always evolving products. And that's brought Azavar to the result. What is the result? Smarter cities with stronger finances, responsive leaders, and content citizens and businesses. So let's dig a little deeper into how we achieve compliance using digital tax filing and payment, because tax filing and payment is pretty simple, but when you start adding in audit and all the many rules and back-end machine learning to identify prospective potential errors well before an audit might need to be done, let's discuss this in further detail on how to successfully roll out a digital tax filing and payment platform and educating, registering, and collecting from your taxpayers successfully. How do we do that? Well, the old way was we'd administer a tax, local municipalities, local governments, counties, parishes, fire protection districts, emergency service districts, municipal utility districts, what have you. Would administer local tax, was the first implemented tax based on what is allowable under their state statute, and based on maybe some vague or general estimates of what that tax may generate, and then to enact an ordinance levying that tax. It is not a complicated process, nor should it be. It is only a matter of following up and enforcing it, which can be costly and inefficient. So this is where the old adage comes in: build it and they will come. Well, levy a tax, and not every taxpayer is going to know about it, find out about it, and your tax base, your tax rolls are continuously changing. And those that are participating in the economy of your community are continuously changing. And so keeping it not costly and more efficient is very challenging. So for decades, local governments would levy a tax and expect everyone to come, would make a form available or share an ordinance, and would receive payments. And behind those payments was a lot of data, a lot of computations, a lot of information that municipalities once, prior to the advent of the Azavar 360-degree revenue cloud and the Azavar methodologies and technologies, namely LocalGov, for looking at all that data and parsing out not the needles in a haystack, but which needles in a big stack of needles are wrong or should be looked at further. And so that self-reporting went on for decades. Keeping up with who is supposed to pay with an up-to-date list of taxpayers for all locally administered taxes, fees, impact fees, regulatory fees, is not sustainable at scale when done manually. Not anymore. You don't get the revenue if you don't follow up with delinquencies. And if you don't know all the taxpayers that should be paying the tax, then you're not going to be following up with them. And I'm going to give you a few great examples that we've all seen over the last decade. So that was the old way. And the old result was that the city would take what the city got in terms of monthly, quarterly, annual remittances and filings and deposit it, budget for it, plan for it, and expect that amount on an annual basis or biannual basis if you have a biannual budget plan. But you will always have people who will pay the incorrect amount or not pay on time. You can't help it, especially when you're looking to become, and this is, when we talked about stick around, if you're looking to grow revenues, if you're looking to improve your bond ratings, well, something we all as local government professionals or proponents should be discussing now is local government self-sufficiency, because states continue to tighten the noose around local government revenues that are passed down. So your state can't be counted on, and the state legislature can't always be counted on. And I don't think I know one locally elected official or local government professional that would disagree with me on that. And certainly, the federal government cannot be counted on for your revenues either. Even in a disaster situation, I still know of, and we're working with communities in Louisiana that are still trying to get money from Hurricane Katrina. But so that was the old result. And your administration needs to decide if they have the time and resources to do anything about it. Why wouldn't you want to do something about it? Because pursuing full compliance will only result in an incremental increase. Do you want to allocate significant resources to internally pursue delinquency follow-ups, penalties, interest for small fines, and collections enforcement? Is that really the business of where your local government staff should be heading? There are a lot of difficulties associated with maintaining compliance. And many of the communities I talk to and we work with today really are looking at how do they sustain and enhance the livability of their community. And so having staff focus on calling delinquent dog walker licenses or delinquent short-term rental hosts, and sometimes some of your communities might get into dozens or hundreds or thousands of short-term rental hosts. We saw Galveston on one of the communities we work with here in Cook County. There are just dozens of thousands of short-term rental hosts that we monitor and manage through our 360-degree revenue cloud using local gov. So let's talk about the new way. The new way is the way of the future. And you want to advance your community forward, your municipality. You want to advance and progress to the next stage of growing and sustaining your community's economic base, ensuring your community's freedom from impacts in the marketplace, changes in technology, changes in the state legislation, snatch and grabs from state legislatures of your revenues, because and then trying to figure out how to fill that hole, or spending entire years, 2-3 years in legislative sessions trying to at least maintain a little hold on a little bit of some of those revenues. So let's talk about the new way, because you want to advance your community forward. Economic base is manageable, sustainable, enhanceable. You're building a more livable community, whether you want to stay small, whether you want to grow, wherever your community is headed, whatever your community's values. That's why we all live in different towns and cities and villages, because we want different living experiences. And we expect different things and different services from our municipal leaders, our local government professionals, our locally elected officials. But so the new way is to adopt a smart, and when I say smart, I mean learning capabilities. The technology has learning capabilities. It learns. Today we call that artificial intelligence. I really use the term machine learning because there's artificial intelligence is not artificial. You still have to tell a computer how to learn to learn. So the new way is to adopt smart learning capabilities, knowledge retention, automated, digital, secure, and automated tax administration systems that work to educate taxpayers and support them when they need it, when they're ready, when they're working on their schedule. And that's why we call it concierge customer service, because it's available 24/7. The system must be capable of learning, retaining knowledge, and it must provide an exceptional customer experience. In this case, the customer is your taxpayer, your fee payer, your businesses, your residents, your neighbors. It must provide an exceptional taxpayer experience in order to cultivate trust and satisfaction among the businesses and the residents and organizations in your community. You can achieve this by taking the paper out of the process, by taking a lot of the time out of the process, conducting taxpayer education and putting in taxpayer supports, efficiently capturing revenue data, monitoring it, seeing how it compares to the past, how it looks relative to your future plans, and how it compares to other local governments similarly situated nationwide. And then reporting on your data in real time, transparently, to enhance your projections and your budgetary decision-making so you can focus on enhancing the livability and sustaining the livability of your unique community, your town, your village, your parish, your county, your city, wherever it may be, in whatever state or commonwealth of the union. And so the new result that you will get is that your administration will save time and money. It's that simple. This is not complex, but it's hard to do because, as we know, there's lots of competing priorities. And that's why we at Azavar take all the work out of the equation for you. We do the work. We keep you updated. We keep you informed. We make sure the systems in local gov are in place to keep you informed and to inform you better than you would have ever been informed before with business analytics and business intelligence tools. But the new result is that your administration is going to save time and money. You'll decrease the time it takes to administer local taxes by up to 90% is what we've computed and worked out with our customers. You'll increase revenues as a result of the automated compliance. Your staff can focus on high impact work instead of sifting through paperwork, making follow-up phone calls on unpaid taxes or improperly computed taxes. And you will give your businesses the tools and support to do business easily and conveniently and more cost effectively in your community. So if you can help your businesses save money and save time, there is a significant probability that that money is going to be reinvested back into your community. It might only be a few dollars, but every dollar counts, especially if you're a community looking to move to self-sustenance in terms of your revenues, apart from the state or the federal government. And in supporting your businesses to do business easily and conveniently in your community, the new result is going to be able to cater to complex ordinances, more complex taxing structures or graduated taxing structures, which we see becoming more often the case in municipalities and counties and parishes and even special districts. So these are the real ways to achieve compliance through digital tax filing and payment. So digitizing your tax administration leads to decreased costs and increased revenue. Well, let's explore that for a moment. So I already mentioned that we have a number of local government customers that we've done the computations with them. They've done the computations on their own. And they've digitizing and streamlining tax administration with a bulletproof plan for constituent customer service. So making sure that all those taxpayers are supported, their questions answered, those that are not very as technical get the help and support that they need in person if they need it through the Azavar Concierge Customer Service as part of the Azavar 360-degree Revenue Cloud. A bulletproof plan for constituent customer service that leads to 90% reduction in the time it takes to administer taxes. And on the other end, your customers, taxpayers, whether residents or businesses, show anywhere from, at the minimum, 4 to 6, but typically more like a 12 to 20% savings for their businesses or their organizations on accounting and tax compliance work. And that's also measuring their time. So now they have more time to invest in your community. They have more resources to invest in your community. And residents, local gov handles tax rebates to residents for many of our communities, for example. And residents receive tax rebates 90% faster and with no hassle. The money goes right into their account and local gov automatically reviews the data to determine if they're eligible under your rules for that rebate. And then that rebate then goes to them. And all is done. And you have a happy resident base if you do offer rebates for some of your locally authorized or locally administered taxes. Now, a lot of municipalities are using many systems that are jerry-rigged together, Excel, spreadsheets, systems of, made up of a few processes, an access database that's, getting data dropped by your general ledger software, and piecemealing the tax compliance and process solutions. It can become a mess. And especially when your municipality doesn't have money or funds to go out and find a better, easier, cheaper, faster, because that's what the advancement of technology is all about. Better, faster, cheaper. And if you don't have the ability to get any, to take advantage of any of those opportunities, those technologies, then over decades, these gerrymandered systems come together, and there's systems that work for the staff in place. But then when you have staff turnover and institutional knowledge is gone, or the person, that clerk that has been there for 40 years, and I know many great clerks across this great country, and I tell you, there are many instances where those clerks identify the need, and that the as of our 360-degree revenue cloud and local gov will be part of their succession plan. But you may have just implemented a new financial software or an online payment option for your taxpayers or your utility bill payers, and you're starting to hear and see that taxpayers and businesses may want more of this, or you're starting to see some of the opportunity in the technology that you have implemented in your internal systems for your GL financial ERP needs. But I would argue that this is not a step in the right direction, either one. As I shared with you before, turning a PDF into electronic form and putting it on your website, and it's your electronic form that works with your system, is great. But if that taxpayer or that resident has business in the community next door, they now have to go to 2 websites. Now imagine 4, and then 8, 16, 32, exponentially so on and so forth, until you become Airbnb, which handles 60,000 local government tax filings and remittances every month. And so I argued that it's not a step in the right direction, but instead it's just creating more work in the future when system integration problems arise and the individual solutions don't work towards achieving full ongoing compliance. Because the ultimate goal here is, as I've got up on the screen, the ultimate goal is simple. Everyone who should be remitting tax is. Taxpayers are paying the correct amount and they are paying it on time. Your taxpayers are educated on ordinance interpretation and can easily access supporting information that makes doing business with your community convenient and fast. And when I said number 2, taxpayers are paying the correct amount and they are paying on time, you have peace of mind that you know through the as of our 360-degree revenue cloud, through local gov, that they are, when we say they're paying the correct amount, they indeed, when asked the question, do you know you're getting every penny you're due? You can respond yes. And then number 4, the cost to enforce compliance is significantly less than the incremental income you're receiving in tax revenue from the compliance efforts and enforcement efforts. In a smart digital tax and fee administration system, when and where information is captured, automated, and saved in one platform, this takes the paper out of the process and makes it very, very user-friendly and convenient for your taxpayers to file and pay. Then it makes your administration's jobs easier with systemized reporting and integrations. The manual tasks that would be done by your staff are now handled through simple exports by a click of a button or simple API integrations. Filing can be retrieved in an instant, and forgiveness can be toggled on or off in an instant. Forgiveness for a penalty, forgiveness for interest. Your taxpayers automatically know what they owe, their interest rate, and any other calculation. So now there's never a time gap, and they're never facing their neighbor at the counter that causes back and forth miscommunication and frustration. For example, if I come in to your municipality's counter tomorrow to pay on a filing that is 1 month late, I pay the fee as well as my tax amount, but a few weeks later, when interest has accrued and the report is actually run and ready, and staff realizes they need me to also pay interest that they didn't capture when I was standing at the counter right then and there during that transaction that accrued over the weeks that I did not pay, this is a lot of time and frustration that is going to be generated for your staff and for your taxpayer. And I may admit that your taxpayers, your residents or businesses may become resentful too about some of these if you continue to hold on to some of these age-old processes and jerry-rigged systems. When using a digital system, smart forms save all of my information in that example So I never miss a payment again. This makes me happy because I don't have to worry about paying interest. I don't have to worry about jeopardizing any relationships I have in my community with my neighbor. If my neighbor happens to be the person that would be on the other side of that counter, and because now I don't have to go in because now I'm automatically reminded. It makes me happy. It encourages local business, and your community gets revenue into your bank account, instantly remitted that day, without having to open an envelope, without having to take checks to the bank, without having to put checks into a machine, without having to stamp, without having to type them into your system anymore. The administrative costs associated with the tax process can be so very costly to your local government. Businesses need questions answered, and sometimes a lot of handholding when new ordinances come out, or ordinances are confusing, and there are no streamlined processes in place that help them stay informed with the changes. Your staff has a lot on their plate. I work with dozens of local government staff members every day. I talk with them, and that's why, as I shared with you early on, the first lesson I learned is it's not just about the money, it's about our time, because municipal time, expertise, institutional knowledge is a very, very dwindling, precious natural resource that we must learn how to better conserve. And the technologies which we're talking about now are the ways to conserve. But your staff has a lot on their plate, and their activities they are expected to do is only increasing while their bandwidth continues to be stretched usually, and it becomes impossible to give the education or time or support to your taxpayers, your customers, that is necessary to incentivize local businesses, to cultivate trust, and to promote transparency. Having a turnkey resource to answer all questions, follow up with every delinquency, with courtesy, friendliness, like I'm your neighbor, and ensuring taxpayers are educated is essential to supporting your local economy. Implementing this operation internally is not sustainable when staff is wearing so many hats. You need a resource that is dedicated to this one objective and works on your behalf and with your municipality to truly understand the needs, challenges, and confusion that the taxpayers face through the regular compliance process. So, digging even deeper into increasing revenue, reducing costs, and strengthening your community relationships. Well, one way to do that is certainly through revenue reviews. And when any municipality enters the ASVAR 360-degree revenue cloud, we use local.gov to, as we begin collecting taxes and filings and information from taxpayers, we use local.gov, and our staff that collects data from those taxpayers or collects data from your ordinances to make it easy on all parties involved. And so let's talk about how to achieve full compliance through revenue reviews while eliminating your risk and workload. And I'm going to go back to this, the old way, new way, because if it's not getting better, faster, and cheaper, and there are things that don't, the ties that bind your community don't get cheaper. They're not fast. They don't come faster. And sometimes they're not always easy. But when we're talking about technology, when we're talking about processes, when we're talking about the work involved for your staff and your taxpayers and making their lives easier and giving them more time and giving them more of their money back in terms of savings, and you of your money back in terms of savings, and you getting more money for your municipality through identifying lost revenues, that does nothing but enhance your community. So the old way is to conduct an internal audit, not your annual audit, which is usually conducted under, in accordance with state statutes, but is to conduct an internal audit without realizing the man hours involved, the different efforts, the different areas of expertise, and the track record that is necessary to succeed. Because anyone can find money, most can't collect it. You have to understand the complexities of taxpayers that do business all across the nation and do business just in your town, and what that means to each of them, and how to get information from them so that they're not overburdened and that they're willing to be compliant and interested in being compliant because it's part of their civic duty, part of their responsibility as a member of your community, a contributor to your community. And so the old result when doing an audit that way was, the old result is an audit process that on average would take somewhere around 450 days and is hardly ever followed through with. And 450 days, mind you, is over a year. And not being followed through with because of other new competing priorities that come up. That is a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted money, a lot of wasted resources, while accepting an extremely high amount of risk. Because the amount of risk is this is not a contingent fee attorney issue where a contingent fee attorney had, they know what the problem is, they just have to go and collect. The high amount of risk is you don't know if a problem exists. You want to make sure that a problem doesn't exist. And whatever kind of problems you might find that exist, if it's not the money, it might be communication. It might be updates to ordinances. It might be updates to franchise agreements, understandings with utilities that have gone through 3 or 4 mergers in the last decade, for example. Because doing all that, expending all those resources, time and money, while accepting an extremely high amount of risk, taking on a project that has no guaranteed findings is very, very risky. The lack of skilled workers due to high turnover rates and retirees, folks that know this stuff and have known this stuff for the last 50 years, compounds the issue of this way being an ineffective way to do audits. And to ensure compliance, to monitor compliance, to raise red flags when there might be an oddity in compliance, and it should be checked before an audit even needs to occur. So the new way is to use a firm that has the specialized technology and access to information to look at 100% of errors, not a sampling, the needles out of the haystack, all into a big needle stack, and then just finding those few needles in that stack of millions and millions of needles that are bent. Access to the information to look at 100% of errors, even complex hidden errors. These reviews and audits should incur no upfront costs to a municipality. Remember, I talked about affordability earlier. Due to the uncertain nature of the findings, and the process that is done and used should be completed all the way through to settlement and collection, also incurring no cost to your municipality. This approach is the only way your government will eliminate risk, workload, and increase your revenue without impacting your budget. So the new result is beautiful. The new result is greater revenues than would have been achieved otherwise because of the combination of technology and institutional information used. Using this methodology, the project will be completed in a fraction of the time with little to no work on the part of your staff. And the most favorable settlements end up being negotiated on behalf of your local government, and risk will be eliminated by incurring no upfront costs, including attorney's fees, if needed. This new way produces faster results because it makes the decision-making process faster on how to address the findings of any review or audit, which results in the greatest maximum revenue and minimizes human error. Gross revenue calculations are conducted properly, and complicated utility packages like cable are reviewed with the same level of complexity and scrutiny. Once true baseline compliance is achieved, then we can future-proof, you can become more economically self-sustaining by future-proofing your revenue sources and your revenue structure by looking at the accurate data and identifying new revenue streams to adopt based on technological advances and industry changes, like cutting the cord, like short-term rentals. Short-term rentals being a great example of hotel taxes, lodging taxes, TOT, HOT, whatever acronym, depending upon whether you're in California or Texas, respectively. Transient occupancy taxes or hotel occupancy taxes. Those definitions did not include short-term rental online management platforms or online travel companies like Expedia or Airbnb. And that would be a great result, a great new result. So let's talk about the next step. we talked about looking at just now a better way of looking at how your taxes and your fees are computed by your self-reporting taxpayers and fee payers. Well, now let's make sure every serviceable location usage, whether it's streaming tax, whether it's a ride-sharing tax, whether it is a hotel tax on brick and mortar hotels, and your community is completely banned short-term rentals. Let's talk about how we leverage geographical information systems, or GIS technology, and institutional knowledge within your government that will allow you to correct and collect the maximum amount due to you. GIS software helps to verify the accuracy of address data, and for a GIS software must be used to standardize the format of databases provided by any taxpayer that's using addresses as a taxable nexus. And I will state that the software must be capable of parsing and validating millions of pieces of data quickly, efficiently, and accurately. And I'm not talking about data that is based upon zip code, because we all those experienced in local government have seen the errors that occur with how zip codes correlate to your municipal or county or parish or special district boundaries. They don't directly correlate. And often they're wrong to your disadvantage. Remember to factor in gross revenues to ensure that constituents are paying the correct amount of taxes and fees and remitting it correctly for every serviceable location within the corporate boundaries of your municipality, especially if you're looking at graduated taxes based upon different types of taxpayers, residents versus businesses, small commercial versus large commercial or industrial, for example. But why do we bother? Why are we bothering having this discussion? Because we're all looking for good government, and good government is better government. And better government ensures accountability, accurate revenue, and equitable and fair collection. Just because you've passed an ordinance, don't expect that tax you levied is fair and equitable unless you have confirmed that it is being remitted and filed and computed, and those remittances are based on the right computations and the right data in order to determine it is fairly paid and fairly levied and fair and equitably dealt with across all your taxpayers. And that's why compliance is so important. I keep talking about institutional knowledge. What is institutional knowledge? Well, some short form folks might talk about people, process, and technology. We're talking about technology, so people, process. But when we look at what we call the 4 pillars of institutional knowledge here at ASAVAR, my team and I, look at what's required to conduct successful audits and reviews, and ensure that the local gov platform is continuously being upgraded and updated to meet the changes in regulatory structures, in legal structures, in taxing structures, in definitions of gross revenue, in changes of corporate boundaries. So the 4 pillars of institutional knowledge. In local government, there's a major loss of institutional knowledge, as I've shared before, as valuable people come and go over the decades. And there are 4 institutions of knowledge that you need to know to have a successful revenue review or audit. First, Pillar 1, your local government, of course. 2, other local governments across the nation. 3, and not just your state, not just your region, not anymore, because services, goods, sales are being made in your community that are happening on a global scale, from someone in another country to someone in another state to someone in another county. You can't just count on what's going on regionally or within your council of government or your area of where your community is. So that's why local governments across the nation is so important as the second pillar of institutional knowledge. Understanding the taxpayer's institution that you're auditing, that you're reviewing. If you don't understand their business, then how can you really effectively ensure that they're equitably collecting and paying to your community? And that's why that's the third level of institutional knowledge, the third pillar. And then 4th, project and process management knowledge, because there are steps, there are people, there are different systems involved, no matter how much technology we apply to it, and it needs to be managed. And if it's managed on a large scale over a number of different revenue sources for hundreds of communities nationwide, there's a lot more institutional knowledge there than there is if we're looking at just one revenue source in one community, and it's the only revenue source I ever looked at, and it's the only community I ever worked in. If you don't understand how they work or who to call, you're going to spend 6 months trying to figure out who to get in touch with when you're doing an audit. The loss of institutional knowledge is intangible. For example, let's say that you worked for a municipality and did one of these audits that found $1 million. I've been recently watching reruns and of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So let's say $1 million. Then you retired, and that municipality's never going to be able to do it again because there was no one there to capture that institution of that person of your work and process and knowledge of her local government and the institution of that utility industry or that short-term rental industry or that ride-sharing industry or that streaming video industry. All of these are sources of revenue that local governments would never have contemplated 5, 10, 20 years ago. Successful collections is important here too. And so only in the title do you see collect, and collect the maximum. Correct the maximum, collect the maximum. So successful collections require an effective negotiation process. And this is where years of knowledge and many a gray hair come in. An attorney's average hourly cost, when considering all the learning knowledge that a standard municipal attorney that may be charging $150 to $300 needs to do to understand an industry or a new type of tax or the type of issues that are being raised as part of an audit by anyone that may be looking at the numbers of the data. An average attorney's hourly costs, let's say of $800 in settlements, are only one piece of the collection process. There are 3 pieces of the results of an audit of findings report. Findings reports always try to meet their customers' expectations. Tier 1, and so if I tell you, if you ask me, how do I know that I'm getting every penny I'm due? And I say, you don't until we implement the as of our 360-degree revenue cloud using local gov and work using our data, your data, and the taxpayers' data to ensure that you're getting every penny you're due. So that may have 3 different kinds of results. Tier 1 is that when you're engaging in such a relationship with an outside third-party administrator, as we've been discussing, Tier 1 is that their job, should be to deliver a professional report to you no matter what, even if it's free, even if they did all the work, one of the most professional reports you would ever see in the industry. Something that if you're a local government finance professional, a GASB report, a K for quality level reporting, your awards for budgets from GFOA, these are the type of level of quality of professional reporting of which I'm stating. And so first and foremost, if you're asking the question, how do I know I'm getting every penny I'm due? And I come back and say, I'm going to give you a solid professional report. So if you're a staff member recommending that taxes need to be increased or new taxes need to be levied, if you're an elected official that has to tell your residents and your businesses, your neighbors that you have to increase taxes again because of some swap and grab by the state of some of your other revenues that you had budgeted for and were counting on for years to come and had counted on for years before, you're going to get a professional report that shows them that you have ensured that you are doing your due diligence. It's the equivalent to what you would see from a regular auditor, but we are not accountants, and you don't need to be an accountant to do a revenue audit. It is about the data. It is always about the data because good data makes good decisions. And that's why the second tier is that you may get a report that finds that there are a number of errors and they're occurring right now. And they need to be fixed, should have been fixed, or must be fixed. And that's what should be delivered to you. A report of how the bleeding is going to be stopped going forward, or how it has been stopped, or what mitigation needs to occur with your team or without your team, and hopefully most of the time without your team, because as I've said, our firm learned and has known for 25 years since the first local government we ever worked with that time is just as sometimes, if not more valuable than money. And then third, a findings report that may show you are owed taxes in the past, and that requires a collection effort. And you've got a partner with a 360-degree model and technology and process and case management process that manages all of those collections to work to settle and collect those monies from taxpayers, and that doesn't benefit until you benefit by the monies getting into your municipal or local government coffers. I know we here at ASVAR send you a report that describes this, so that in the future, if you as a local government or a staff person have to look at new taxes or have to show that you are fairly taxing everybody, and part of that is ensuring through compliance, because not everyone may be defining gross receipts or defining all the taxable items or locations in your community correctly. That due diligence and that compliance is very important for you to be able to maintain that trust with your constituents. So, achieving better collections through ordinance optimization. Now, this is a little different than the collections I was talking about before. That's collections of money that we know that is there. But now let's talk about ordinance optimization, because this is very critical as regulations, statutes, federal standards, state standards, county standards, local government standards, GASB standards, technology standards change ever so quickly, and you have to be ever so on top of all of those, and they're always a priority. The old way was, to achieve better collection through ordinance optimization was occasionally, and we heard it from Linda, the treasurer in Quincy, that they had ordinances that weren't reviewed for 20, for a score, for 30, 40 years, 2 score, or maybe even 50 years. And so they weren't keeping up with the technology. The ordinances weren't keeping up with the technology, the changes in business practices, the changes in the economic cycles, the changes in the products or services that you may be levying a tax on. The old way was to have your local, your municipal or county or your local attorney have them and their legal team or the law firm draft an ordinance using a best practice template at the time. The old result was, of course, you would incur one-time high attorney fees. You would incur the pain of having to answer to your residents and businesses, why is there a change in my taxes now? We didn't know that this tax was like this or should be like this, versus incremental changes. But you've now spent money and time on your attorneys convincing all the stakeholders involved and managing the process. But the missing component is on ambiguity and the interpretation to which the taxpayers are subject. And taxpayers in a self-reporting environment make those interpretations themselves, and they don't usually call you or ask, especially if they're multinational corporations or large tech companies or large marketplaces, or even small local area franchises that are doing very well, but they're focused on their growth. Their business is their business is not filing and paying taxes and making sure it's always done right. And so the new way of better collections through ordinance optimization is incrementally, regularly reviewing and identifying the variables that impact tax compliance issues, and examines the ways ordinances and ordinance improvements can help. By doing this, you're going to get the new result. The new result is overall better revenue collection by the means of closing loopholes and identifying industry changes. Now, investigating past ordinance shortfalls and anticipating industry changes before hiring an attorney, this is important because now you're one step ahead of the process. And the ultimate goals are really to understand industry changes that impact tax revenue and fees and capitalize on those opportunities to ensure you're getting every penny that you do. Second goal, to clear up ambiguities that lead to taxpayer confusion and about compliance and irregular compliance issues. And third, to ensure your taxpayers and staff are educated on ordinance interpretation and you have accounted for all ways your businesses interact with tax compliance requirements. So in summary, And I know we've been talking for quite a while, and I appreciate you sticking around. If you don't have time to stick around for just a little more, then please click the link to to schedule a call, and I would be glad to hear about your community, share with you some things about my community. But right now, in sum, if you leverage specialized technology and institutional knowledge during revenue reviews, if you adopt a cost-effective digital compliance solution that monitors, maintains, enhances, and reports going forward. And 3, support and educate your taxpayers and staff using these digital platforms and these digital methods of communication. Videos, like we're doing right now, for example. You can maximize your revenue potential, your full revenue potential, streamline compliance, and prevent errors moving forward without impacting your budget, and while saving time, money, effort, and precious resources. Because remember, we started out saying and asking, how are we going to be able to show you how to save, how to achieve better revenue compliance without impacting your budget? These are the 3 ways to do that. And with that, I'm here. I encourage you, partner with me, my team, ASAVAR and LocalGov to maximize your revenue. I've mentioned it before, but we officially call it the ASAVAR 360-degree revenue cloud. And we call it the cloud because we utilize technology to share information between us, you, and taxpayers and other local governments. Information that should be appropriately shared, confidential or secure information, stays secure. But through this maximization and compliance program, you will achieve 100% streamlined compliance. With concierge municipal, so concierge customer service that I mentioned to you earlier and we've talked about is not just for your customers, taxpayers, or your customers, what I would call your customers, but for my customer, because I'm encouraging you to come on board the ASAVAR 360-degree revenue cloud and experience our concierge customer service and consulting services for you and your municipal staff, your county staff, your parish staff, your special district staff. And taxpayer support at an unparalleled cost and time savings for you. Join and be part of the nation's #1 municipal revenue management program, the ASAVAR 360-degree revenue cloud. Again, this is only for local governments who want to maximize revenue. This is for local governments only who collect taxes and fees, no matter how few or how many, how little or how much, but you want to maximize your revenues. And part of maximizing your revenues is saving yourself time and money, effortlessly achieving ongoing compliance and supporting your businesses. But you are struggling to find a cost-effective and time-efficient solution that's comprehensive. That's why we use the term 360. We go full circle, and we continue to keep going full circle. So here's what you're going to get when you work with us. Here's what's going to happen. First, you will eliminate risk of compliance reviews with no upfront costs and receive faster results than you would have otherwise. 2, you're going to increase your Moody bond rating or your Fitch bond rating or your Standard & Poor's bond rating because all 3 of those bond rating agencies now use within their management and analysis and discussions with management, they have a number of points and questions and issues that they want to address and identify and seeing that your community is regularly auditing and monitoring the consistency after any compliance review. The ongoing compliance of the revenue sources underlying your municipal debt, they're going to give you higher ratings, which is going to higher more points, which is going to lead to higher bond ratings. What's going to happen when you work with us, when you work with me and my team here at ASAVAR and LocalGov, you're going to get an all-in-one tax compliance solution for filing, remittance, reporting, collections, enforcement, and taxpayer support. You're going to be able to forget about wasting time, money, and valuable shrinking municipal resources or tightening municipal resources, whether you're growing or whether you're staying the same or whether you're shrinking in your economic bases. your economies, your local economies. It doesn't matter. Local governments are always strained because they're always trying to do better, to provide better services to their residents and businesses with as little resources as possible. And when you work with us, you can expect to be supported by the most sophisticated technology and expertise in the nation. And we utilize and have developed integration with systems including Munis, Tyler Technologies. We utilize tools and business intelligence platforms that are only used by Fortune 500 companies, and they can only be afforded by Fortune 500 companies. Never to mention a local government, small or large, small or medium size, I should say. Some large local governments do use, like Cook County, do use some of those large business intelligence and analytics tools. So let's very quickly go through how as of our 360-degree revenue cloud works, piece by piece in the circle. So how does local gov work? Well, before, tax administration required manual collection and enforcement, which can drain resources and revenue. Easy. Now you can use local gov as part of the 360-degree revenue cloud from ASVAR. Our tax collection and accountability software and service that digitally manages and streamlines tax and fee administration. And through that, through local gov and through the ASVAR 360-degree revenue cloud, you'll receive full-time support for your local government, a taxpayer education program customized to your taxpayers and your community, and ongoing facilitated taxpayer adoption to the platform, 24/7 customer service, maximized revenues as a result of ongoing compliance improvements and audit findings. But ongoing compliance improvements infer that, and we do show this, and local gov provides it, that through that ongoing compliance, revenues do grow and do improve because we get smarter and forms get smarter and data collection gets smarter and taxpayers become more willing to share data because they know it's secure, they know it's safe, and they know that it's part of their civic duty. And most importantly, they don't want to deal with being audited. They want to pay their fair share, and they're willing to give you a reasonable amount of data to show that they're doing that. And that's going to cultivate trust and satisfaction among your business community. So how does it work? Revenue reviews. Very quick and easy. Before, when doing a revenue review or audit, you would have to commit to a process that can last more than 2 years with no guaranteed outcomes of accuracy or findings or any money in the bank. So you're just spending money. But now you can start our simple revenue review program and leverage advantages, including no upfront cost, performance fee based, proprietary geocoding technology, and proprietary gross receipts or gross revenue line by line by industry statements reviewed through our technology, access to unrestricted institutional knowledge, and the recovery of funds on your behalf. And we use attorneys that will collaborate with and keep your local attorney up to date on any legal issues or collection issues. But most importantly, attorneys that have collected monies on behalf of thousands of municipalities nationwide with thousands of different types of taxpayers and thousands of different types of situations. How does it work? Ordinance development. So how does ASVAR's ordinance development and support program work as part of the ASVAR revenue 360-degree revenue cloud? Well, this is an important perk that comes with our partnership. Before you utilize your municipal attorney, or you may go out to hire a special counsel, or if you have an in-house counsel, you may hire a specialized outside counsel. At $800 is no joke. When you really, it's not just, it's including the indirect costs and direct costs. The direct cost might be $150 to $300 an hour for working with your municipal attorney, all of which are dollars well spent, because every municipal attorney has your interest and local government's best interest at heart. But they may not be familiar with similarly situated issues that may be occurring half the country away and that have already been dealt with and addressed and don't need or require a lot of time and money in order to develop that ordinance or solve that problem or update that ordinance or ensure that your ordinances are updated to current regulatory, technological, marketplace changes. But now you can receive this service for free as part of a perk of your partnership with ASAVAR, and guarantee better collections, incur no cost and minimal management time, and gain access to national knowledge of industry and policy changes to keep a pulse on trends in the 4 institutions that we reviewed and discussed earlier. Now, if you sign up today, you will receive LocalGov's digital tax filing and payment platform and customer service, revenue reviews using LocalGov to ensure compliance from day one, and that collects data from prior to day one to ensure that you are getting every penny you're due, and you will be getting every penny you're due on a contingency fee base, ordinance optimization, and finally, expert consultants, expert local government servant leaders that are familiar with topics, as individuals familiar with topics as diverse as I shared, cable PEG fees, all the way to ride sharing licensing, all the way to new issues like video streaming relative to video service and cable franchise fees, and the differences and how they apply to your community and in your state. And 5-year forecasting. So as part of having a lot of data, aggregating a lot of data, continuing to collect a lot of data, maintain that data, and enhance how we look at that data and look at it in different ways, and sustain that information on your behalf regularly, you're going to receive spot-on regular 5-year forecasts. So if you can, please stick around for a little Q&A. I'm going to Q&A with myself because these are many of the questions that I get from many of you when you do schedule a call. So, but if you can't stick around, please schedule a call, and I'd be glad to go through any of these questions or any other questions. And I ask that you go through our little survey here at the end. But if you can't stick around for Q&A, then when we do talk, we'll have a more informed discussion about about issues relating to these questions, and we can dive deeper into how you believe and how you see, based on what we've gone through in this discussion, this conversation, with you, local government proponents, officials, supporters of communities and building better communities. We'll be able to go through these more in-depth questions when we do talk, if you're able to stick around. So let's start with the first question. What if my municipality doesn't administer a lot of local taxes? I get this question a lot. In reality, your municipality probably administers more taxes or fees than you might realize. Everything from dog walking licenses to fuel taxes, lodging to franchise fees. Every penny matters. And after we complete baseline compliance reviews and setting up in local gov of each of your revenue streams and taxpayers, our self-auditing future performance of the local gov platform will automatically keep your taxpayers in compliance going forward. And we'll work with you and your staff to get this online filing and payment platform up and running in the snap of a finger and help your taxpayers get started. My second question that I get a lot, how will this fit into my budget? I think you've seen some examples of that it's net neutral, especially when there are performance fees involved. But first, we understand at ASAVAR, me, my team, our staff all around the country, we visit local governments' offices, work with clerks, collect documents, we go in and scan and do the work for them. Because remember, the story I shared with you about the first finance director that I ever worked with shared with me, it's not always about the money, it's about the time. And so our staff comes on site at our expense. But we understand just how tight municipal budgets are or can be. And that's why our pricing structure for revenue reviews involves no upfront costs. We work on a contingency fee basis. And if we recover revenue, we'll share in those return revenues. However, we do not share if no revenue is recovered. We do not share if there are no errors found, as I shared before. We do share with you a very professional report saying that you have squeezed every drop of blood from that turnup or made sure that everyone is compliant, and you may have to go back and levy some other taxes. But we don't take a dime of any government's money, of any community's funds, until your community is first paid. Second, LocalGov, the online remittance platform, compliance platform, and revenue management platform, is priced based on the needs of each municipality. And we'll work with your team to arrive at a price based on transactions processed and other customized requirements if you have it. But we also have options where there's no customization necessary, and LocalGov can be up and running for you and your taxpayers tomorrow. However, the LocalGov platform is so easy. You heard 3 customers say it, and you heard me say what 3 customers said at the beginning of our conversation here today. But you'll hear it from every one of 400 plus. It is so easy to use LocalGov that it is a guaranteed revenue generator. Your taxpayer constituents will be able to remit payments more swiftly and consistently. Funds are available almost immediately. You don't have to deal with bounce checks. Everything is PCI and NACHA compliance, so you don't have to worry about compliance issues and changes in those compliance programs by the payment card industry or the ACH banking industry, e-check industry. Funds are available almost immediately, ensuring that you can continue to provide service to your residents and spend your time focusing on that. Third question I get a lot. Do I really need an outside vendor to conduct revenue reviews? Well, yes. And if you don't believe me, I can give you a number of names of those 400 customers who did conduct those outside revenue reviews themselves, and were not able to either get data or get a hold of people or get the attention and cooperation and respect that they deserved from their civic partners, their business partners. And so here's why. A truly comprehensive revenue review includes initial discovery, reckoning, and collections. That entire process, while using a lot of proprietary technology within our LocalGov platform, when conducted internally, can take you up to 2 years, depending on complexity, responsiveness of taxpayers and businesses, and collections. Few municipalities have the staff required to manage such a thorough and complex process, and the funds generated could be canceled out by payroll costs. However, as of our takes on the financial risk, by first spending our time, effort, and technology, people, process, and technology, to identify if there are any issues that do exist. And if there aren't, we don't make any money. Second, there's no financial risk because if we do find errors, those errors, we will ensure that they're corrected and the monies are collected and back into your general fund or specialized fund, depending upon the type of revenue. But as of our takes on all of that financial risk, by offering a no-fee, contingency-only model for municipalities, we only get paid after you do. And we're statutorily prohibited from providing a contingent fee-based option. We provide a not-to-exceed option of time and materials, where you only pay for our time at a not-to-exceed level should you get paid as the result of our time and material efforts. So there are 2 ways around that. We do more than just check addresses or different lines of revenue in computing gross revenues or gross receipts or gross operating revenues. Using our proprietary GIS and geocoding software and a time-tested process, we uncover all errors, rate issues, and boundary concerns. Our 360-degree approach looks at every single ordinance and levy from all possible angles. I know a few municipalities that like to use water billing lists to conduct these reviews themselves, and they bring us in and ask us to implement our 360-degree revenue cloud using LocalGov, and primarily more for the forward-going compliance management maintenance. But the few that have used water billing lists, I have an old adage that municipal engineer once said to me, "I've never seen a street light that uses a toilet." Question number 4. My municipality is so small. Do we really need your service? Well, yes. And first and foremost, we don't spend a lot of your time and a lot of your effort. We don't want to spend any of your time or any of your effort except to approve the program, join the program, and let us go and identify any issues, collect those revenues going forward, report on them, ensure they maintain compliance, enforce your ordinances and your revenues, and help you forecast and identify new revenue opportunities. But we don't discriminate on size when it comes to revenue reviews and the as of our 360-degree revenue cloud. But we don't discriminate on size when it comes to revenue reviews because taxpayers don't discriminate on size. Smaller communities lack the kind of oversight abilities that larger municipalities may have. And we bring those resources to the table and bring them to the table to bear no matter how small or how large. Here's a great example. And please call my friend, Mayor Jason Ashmore. We share the same first name. That's why I suggest you give him a call. Jason Ashmore, the mayor of Cesar, Illinois, with a population of 1,875. We worked with Cesar, the mayor and his treasurer, to uncover $10,000 in revenue for a town of only 1,875 people and a small economic base. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? LocalGov, our digital remittance platform, helps small municipalities offer more high-value services. Instead of pushing paperwork, your staff can work directly with businesses and residents on more meaningful efforts that are more meaningful to them and more meaningful to your community. And that's what I mean by high-value services, because each municipality is in the business of providing services, safety, public safety, fire safety, health and life wellness safety, snow plowing, street resurfacing, depending upon where you're at, tree cutting, sand raking, depending upon where you're at. But instead of pushing paperwork, your staff can now work directly with businesses and residents on more meaningful efforts. Plus, your taxpayer constituents will save on late fees and fines when they have the option to file, pay, and manage their businesses' local tax compliance themselves online. Question number 5. Will a revenue review or local gov implementation take up a lot of my time or a lot of time period? Absolutely not. I can't say it enough. Many, many times have I heard that it's not just the money that's going to be found, but it is our time. The benefit of hiring a seasoned local firm such as Azavar, and Azavar is most likely local to you. We work in 2 territories, we work with 24 different state governments in those states, and we work with over 400 municipalities nationwide in every state in the union. And so the benefit of hiring a seasoned local firm such as Azavar is that we do all of the heavy lifting. After a short call and subsequent site visit to collect relevant documents or data, our team will be off and running. And we've been known when we're collecting documents or data to help clerks or treasurers or clerk, treasurer, city manager, mayors in small towns do filing and opening the mail when need be because our staff is there, has the time and resources, and is interested in helping you save time. But also adopting LocalGov is similarly straightforward. Our platform, the LocalGov platform, takes as little as a day to turn on and implement. Typically, most communities takes about 2 to 4 weeks, 15 to 30 days to implement. Again, with our team doing much to all of the heavy lifting. And then you'll watch the time and savings add up as previously paper processes are replaced by speedy digital methods. I saved the most important question for last. Can I trust Azavar and LocalGov? I'm going to leave that up to you. I've shared a lot of names during this conversation with you that you can feel free to call. The communities with which we work are plastered all over the web, all over all over the information that we share, all over the communications that we put out to all local governments throughout the nation of new ideas, new thought leadership, issues that help keep you ahead of the curve. Even if you're not working with Azavar, you'll see those communities and their names all over the place, and I'm sure you'll know someone there. The world is a small place. Local government likes to work locally for a reason. And I've met many a city manager, finance director, treasurer, or clerk, or financial analyst, or assistant city manager, or mayor that grew up or went to live somewhere else during their lifetime in the United States or elsewhere, and knows someone on that list of 400 and growing list of customers, and a very fast growing list of customers. But can I trust ASVAR and local gov? Yes, we've been a trusted partner to local governments for more than 25 years. We've returned more than $500 million, and that number doesn't stop, because remember, those monies, the benefits, inure back to you as the beneficiary, back to your municipality, back to small towns and big cities across the United States. And we are eager to provide case studies and references from our many content, happy, satisfied customers, including city managers, mayors, finance leaders, whomever you may need to speak with. But I'm betting that if you're scheduling a call with me, you've probably already spoken to one of them before you click the button to schedule a call with me, and share your concerns and the composition of your community and what your priorities are, either as a locally elected official, a concerned resident, a professional city manager, a local government professional, finance professional, or otherwise. So I look forward to speaking with you. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Please click the button that you see to schedule a call, and then just go through and answer a few questions. So now I'll know more about your community, and I can do my due diligence before we talk, do my research, and then show you precisely how the ASVAR 360-degree revenue cloud using local gov is going to work wonders for you and your community. Thank you.